everyone. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica, and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at It's Jessinho. So on today's post-match show is obviously going to be about Arsenal versus Sheffield United, where we won by 3-0. So good for us. I really enjoyed this game, and I'm just kind of enjoying it for what it is. I know it's kind of like, well, what does this mean for our season? But I honestly don't think every single game needs to be like a referendum on the manager, or we have to overthink it. Sometimes it's just nice to watch us, play really well against a team, have a dominating performance against them, be relatively unchallenged, and just go away with the win and enjoy the football. Sometimes it's just that. And I've kind of named this game, the game that meant everything and nothing at the same time. I just think that it may not mean much for our season, but it means so much for the confidence of the players going into the most important game of our season, which is, our game against Slavia Prague on Thursday. So we can talk a lot more about it. But before further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest, FK. Hey.
Hi, Jess. How you doing?
I'm good. I always mention this, but I think it's just so funny how we act like we weren't just talking like 10 seconds ago. And we're like, hey, how are you? Like, we've literally done this already. But can you let everybody know, like, what do you do? Who are you in the Arsenal universe? Can you let everybody know?
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, thanks for having me on. Real pleasure to be back on. You're doing some great things. My name's Faisal. I go by the handle at FCarnage. Been an Arsenal season ticket holder for years and years and years. Been going to games for a very long time, home and away. Lucky enough to live in London, so following the team since I was a little boy. Sold programs as a boy. Done, you name it, I've done it. And in terms of this season, it's been pretty difficult not being able to go to the stadium for the first time in many, many years, and it's been challenging. But it's been a difficult year for the season for the team as well. Just nothing fancy, just a regular supporter. But I love my club, like you do, like everybody else tuning in does, and I've got some real thoughts on where we are and how we're doing.
Well, we're definitely going to get to all of that good stuff. Most of the time we talk a little bit about the game, but then we dive into what does this mean and how do we feel about the direction? And because I don't think there's a lot riding on the season besides the Europa League, but in terms of the league and all that kind of stuff is kind of a different story. But I have a really, really important question for you just to start things out. It's a really heavy question, so I really want you to get your thinking cap on, get ready for it. Do you think Aubameyang really has the flu?
It's a really good question. Does he have the Ozil strain? Does he have a genuine strain? Does he have, I don't know what's up. Clearly, as a player, he's a little bit out of form, a little bit low on confidence. He's been fined by the club for turning up late for the North London derby. Then, of course, he was subsequently dropped for that game. Didn't have the best of games against West Ham. Had an appalling game against Liverpool and was hauled off in both of those games. So he's not having the best of times. Do I think it's a genuine case of being absent because of illness? Potentially. Do I think it's also a good time for him to be away from the team, just to be sort of gathering his thoughts and just resting? Yes. I think the result on Sunday shows that yesterday. Look, I hope he's well. I hope it is a genuine case of, he's just not been feeling great and that he's been out for the right reasons, but I hope he's brought it back into the squad. So great question, and so many theories online, and I keep seeing lots of people tagging him with the Ozil strain. I certainly hope it's not a repeat of that. I think he has a value and a place in the squad, and we need him. He's one of our best players on his day, and we need him for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I hope he's okay. And, I just don't think it's that deep. I know a lot of fans who are, oh my gosh, they probably just don't want to drop him, with they don't want it to become a thing. Every single time a player is dropped or just needs to be away from the team or be managed in a certain way, we make it such a big deal. We didn't need him against Sheffield. You say that he has the flu so that he can get ready for Thursday's game. And you don't make a big deal out of it because every single time he's not in the squad, it's about something, So for me, it was just their way of just kind of putting him to the side, letting him rest. And I'm pretty sure he'll be available for Thursday. And like you said, we definitely need him. Lacazette is playing really well, but when we get to hopefully the latter stages of the Europa League, I would think that Aubameyang is the type of striker that we would trust to be a part of those games and make things happen. And, I have faith in Aubameyang's, quality when it comes to big games and showing up for us, especially in Europe. So let's just hope that he's doing well and he comes back strong for us. He signed a contract, he's going to be here. So let's not give him the Ozil tag just yet. Let's give him some time. But my favorite part of the game is always, or of game day, is those couple of minutes before the lineup comes out and the anticipation and all the tweets that are like, if so-and-so's not in there, this is going to happen. If so-and-so's not in there, this is going to happen. The lineup came out and I think everybody was like, whew, at least Martinelli's in there, But how did you feel about the formation and how we coped with having like key injuries for Tierney and ESR, Odegaard, Luiz, etc.?
So when the team came out, I was pleased that he didn't rest and rotate too many. I think the temptation would have been to just completely overhaul the 11. I saw shouts for resting the goalkeeper, bringing in some youth players, giving Joel Lopez a run out at left back and playing some of our fringe players across the back and, up through the rest of the team. But I was quite pleased that he went as strong as we reasonably could. When I saw the midfield of Xhaka, Ceballos and Partey, so when I saw those three midfielders in the team, I thought he was going to go 4-3-3. I never anticipated that Xhaka would be used at left back, so that surprised me. But look, in terms of the team, I think Sheffield United are total garbage. I think they've had a terrible season. Chris Wilde was obviously not there, so they haven't got that. They haven't got that sort of grind and that graft about them. They're just a dead team. They know they're going down. I think they seem resigned. So for us, it was the easiest, best fixture to kind of have, one that we desperately needed to get that morale boost, to get that win, to get that clean sheet ahead of, like you described at the start of the show, our biggest game of the season. So the team itself, no real surprises. Xhaka playing at left back was a surprise to me, but Martinelli coming back into the fold was fantastic because I know we'll talk about him shortly, but I think a lot of fans have been really excited about him returning to the team, and it took a long time coming, but boy, did he have a good game.
I'm really happy that Arteta was kind of used this game as like an experiment, especially for the left back position, because I think a lot of us were a little apprehensive about putting Saka there, because that takes away so much from our offense. And, seeing Xhaka back there was like, whoa. But at the same time, it was like, yes, this could work. A left-footed player kind of playing like a midfield role. You can make the other three kind of like center backs. It's all good. I actually kind of like that more than the Cedric, being over there as a makeshift left back. Would you like to see Xhaka start there against Slavia Prague again, or do you think we should go back to Cedric?
It's a difficult question because I think on paper against Sunday, if you look at the performance in isolation, Xhaka was quite comfortable the whole game. He didn't, he played quite well. He wasn't tested. Like I said, Sheffield United aren't the best team, and offensively they've been pretty poor this season. I think that needs to be the strong caveat, that if we have another game, do you repeat Xhaka at left back? We talked about it before the first leg, Jess, that Slavia Prague are a team full of runners. They are aggressive in the press. They work hard in that final third. They defend from the front, as it were. And we know that Xhaka can sometimes get a little stuck in midfield when he's pressed quickly. It's like a slug in treacle, really trying to find his feet quickly. He just doesn't do it quick enough. So I would be a bit anxious about playing him at left back away from home in such a big game. And I think familiarity for me is probably more important than, based on one good game against Sheffield United. So look, it's an interesting option. What I love about Xhaka is, and Mikel Arteta spoke about it after the game, he's the sort of player where if you said, right, Granit, you're playing left back, up front, in goal, he's just, yes, boss, I'll do whatever it takes for the team. I love that about him. I think that's a fantastic quality that he's got. I think he's better in midfield. And again, we have to be careful about Partey having a really good game and Ceballos playing more advanced, and shouldn't get too carried away and think that that's our best combination. I think Xhaka and Partey in the middle is our best combination. So I'd like to see Xhaka return in midfield, and I'd like to see Cedric come back at left back. You?
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult because I don't want to see I think my caveat here, like, if Arteta was asking me what my opinion is, he probably should ask me because I think I know something. But, if you play Cedric at left back, just please play a left footer on the side in front of him so we keep our width. Don't play Willie in there. I think my issue is not Cedric alone. It's Cedric plus Willian. I thought that was dead combination. It didn't work. They have no chemistry, no nothing, so if you do play Cedric there, which is perfectly fine, just make sure you play Pepe, who I think had a decent enough game to have a shout for the game against of Slavia Prague. And I think Willian showed against Slavia Prague in the first leg that we need something different there, especially if Emil Smith-Rowe is not there. So I do agree with you that although I'd be okay with seeing Xhaka there, you're right. We need to keep the midfield combination of Xhaka and Partey together. So I think that does mean Cedric comes in, but who plays right back? What are your thoughts on Hector Bellerin and kind of his season and how he's been, and Chambers and his kind of resurgence into the Arsenal first team, which is kind of something I didn't anticipate?
So firstly on Hector, there's a lot of talk about Hector, and I don't think that's particularly healthy because I think that shows that the fan base is maybe split on his ability and his ability as playing at right back now. Look, he's a loyal servant to the club. I'll never knock him for that. I don't think he's the player he quite was. In the last 2 years, I would say that his form has deteriorated, his strength, his confidence, just his all-round game. What I like about Hector is that he's got a lot of energy. He's up and down the flank. Defensively, he's okay. He's quite progressive in that he finds himself in very good positions. He likes to make up that little midfield when he kind of joins the central midfielders. He finds himself in some really, really great positions in that final third, but his final ball often lets him down. And that's where I probably prefer Chambers, even though we've only seen 2 games from him, really. So the West Ham game, I thought Callum Chambers was excellent. I mean, there were jokes about him being the English Cafu, and his crosses in the final third were brilliant, and it was much needed. But I just don't fancy him as a right back. So look, with Tierney missing, we're going to put a lot more emphasis down the right hand side. So we need someone who's quick. We need someone who can find himself in those good positions, and you just have to hope that he has a good day and that he can find that final ball. In terms of his future, a lot of talk about Paris, which would suit him in terms of lifestyle, in terms of his interest in fashion away from football, the fashion capital of Europe. Obviously a big club, good money. Pochettino probably knows him inside out, so that would probably suit him. And maybe a break from a club after almost 10 years service would be healthy for him. A change of scenery, a change of club is perhaps a good thing. So look, for the rest of the season, I would like to see Bellerin play right back. I don't think it's automatically assumed that he's first choice anymore. And beyond this season, whether Bellerin stays or not is something that's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, the final ball thing, I think is the issue I have with Hector. You can't really help that he lost his pace. That's something you can't really control. He had that horrific injury, and then after that, he was kind of never the same. We've always known about his lack of defensive quality, if that's what you want to call it. So, and really as a fullback in the modern game, is defense really their main thing? And they basically play like wingers anyway, but it's really just his final ball for me. And I sometimes think Arteta has been asking him to do things that are not really in his skill set, like playing pinched in as a midfielder and, trying to get into the offense through the center and, the build-up play. It works sometimes and it doesn't in other situations. But I would agree with you 110%. I think it's time for us to maybe part ways and him to go on to the next chapter of his career. But if you have to add, if it's between him and Chambers, I just can't see us playing Chambers in this game. Hector also plays pretty well in big games. If you look back to the FA Cup final, I thought he was great. So I would trust him at right back, and that would give us an option if Cedric is playing on the left, and we would just kind of want him to stay back, because when he goes forward on that left-hand side, I'm just like, oh gosh, he looks so awkward, but I think I would take Bellerin and Cedric on both sides and just kind of make it easy. But he has some big choices to make, especially seeing how good Lacazette's playing. And I remember when we did the Yama podcast, you said that you're not the biggest Lacazette fan, but seeing kind of like the way that we played and how fluid the game was going, and the one touch passing, where does Aubameyang fit into that when we know that he's not the most technically gifted, but he's probably our best finisher? How do we get him back into the squad and get him back scoring?
So when I look at Aubameyang, I look at a player who is quick, who is clinical, and who is someone who I think should be playing down the middle, off the shoulder of the defender, and being played onto the ball, right? So even if you play, even if you're playing against a deep block, when you've got the nimble sort of creative players like your ESRs, like your Sakas, that can just thread a ball through, you'd still want Aubameyang over anybody else on the end of that ball. And if you're playing up against a high line, perfect for him to run in behind. On his day, and we talked about this at the start, whether it's just he's out of form, or whether he's low in confidence, or just low in morale. I don't know what's happened behind the scenes because of the turning up late to training. It's very, very unlike him. On his day, I think he's our best centre forward, and on his day, I'd like to see him play up front. However, playing him out on the left, I feel, is a great waste of not only his talent, but I think it's to the detriment of the team, because it ruins our structure. You saw, and albeit against Sheffield United last night, just how much energy and directness and work ethic Martinelli brings into the team. When you've got someone who is accomplished at playing that position out wide, when you want someone to show that energy and press from the front when we haven't got the ball, but also graft and run into positions and make, if you look at the pass map, there's quite a lot of long balls going straight to Martinelli to try and get him down that channel. And you just wouldn't have that with Aubameyang. So there's a real sort of double-edged sword here. Not only do you ruin him and his game by playing him out wide, you also isolate him, and you make that at the cost of the team. And so it feels like we're playing with 10 men. So, to answer your question about how we bring him back into the fold, I think, look, he has to be number 9 in the middle, up top on his own. He has to be supported. The team has to be structured to get the best out of him. And you need to manage your expectations. If we're not creating chances, and he's your predator, your talisman up front, then he's not going to get goals. I mean, you need to feed him. And without that supply chain, he's going to struggle. So, you talked actually, Jess, in the Yama podcast about his time at Dortmund. Maybe you want to just give us a refresher on what you think his attitude was like, and where he was deployed best there.
Yeah. So he's had his fair share of disciplinary issues. Well-documented disciplinary issues from his time at AC Milan, and in the latter stages of his career at Dortmund. And that's ultimately why he's at Arsenal today, is that he wanted out of Dortmund. And, it was alleged that he wanted more money and they would not give it to him. So he stopped wanting to play. He kind of had a little fit and left. And then he ended up at Arsenal in January. That being said, that's more my why I don't think he's the right captain. But I think you can have players that are not necessarily the best leaders in your squad if they're being effective. And I don't think, as you've said, Aubameyang's not being used properly. And Arteta needs to make a really difficult decision on whether he wants to play Aubameyang through the middle or Lacazette through the middle. Can't play both. It just doesn't work, and I think it takes away from the game of each. Aubameyang can be a really effective center forward, again, as you've said, if you feed him. If you don't feed him, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, if you have one chance in, Thursday's game, and it's going to fall to either Lacazette or Aubameyang, I think a lot of us would want it to fall to Aubameyang because we understand his quality. Now, whether or not we have the players available to support Aubameyang the way that he needs to be supported up top as a center forward, that's the question. Because essentially you need to have 3 technically gifted players in behind that almost can play, in and around him, feed him the ball, and, almost like 3 10s. And our 3 10s are Emil Smith-Rowe, Martin Odegaard, and Bukayo Saka. 3 players that are probably maybe not going to be available. Some of them probably won't be available. So that leaves you in a tricky situation. The answer is not to put him out wide. I know why Arteta keeps doing that because he wants Lacazette to be able to help him, but it doesn't work. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Lacazette for that particular reason, but at the same time, it's like it's such a big game. I can't imagine what Arteta's going through right now. He has to be doing like mental gymnastics in his head, trying to figure out how he's going to make this work. But I'm telling you right now, if you try to play them 2 together, I just don't think it works. I don't.
I think history has shown that. I think when you're trying to shoehorn them both in, it just doesn't work. I mean, there's been a number of performances that you could probably look back on and think, yeah, Lacazette and Aubameyang, they're the answer, but they're just clearly not. To use Aubameyang out wide and to try and fit Lacazette in just to try and help him, again, to the detriment of the team. You make a really interesting point about the 3 10s, and actually if we're missing 1, 2, or even all 3 of them, again, that needs to be looked at. If you've got outlet players like Saka and Pepe, you need someone to hold the ball up, and that has to be Lacazette. Aubameyang's strength is not back to goal, holding the ball up, linking players in. He is very much an outlet player. You play him onto the ball. So yeah, really interesting conundrum that Arteta's got looking ahead of Thursday. I think I know which way he's gonna go, but whether Aubameyang's back in the team or not, very, very useful weapon to have on the bench. So hope he's back.
Yeah, 100%. You guys, let us know in the chat box who you would start between Aubameyang and Lacazette up top. I mean, again, I'm glad I'm not Arteta. I'd love to have that beautiful hair or, whatever, and maybe sit on the sideline, and act like a coach. But like these tough decisions are just, they got to be rough on him. I imagine he has many sleepless nights. But let's talk a little bit about the confidence. When I did my stream earlier, there were some people in the comments that were saying this is a nothing game and it really doesn't matter. But I tend to kind of say like, this is a confidence boost for certain players that are maybe lacking a little bit of confidence right now. Who do you think needed this confidence boost ahead of the game on Thursday?
It's very easy to say the whole team, but actually probably the whole team as much as the coach. I mean, there was a lot of talk going up into the game about Arteta losing the dressing room. Questionable sources, I have to add. That there's been a breakdown in communication between some players and the coach. That's not particularly helpful. Don't know where that's come from, but there's probably enough ammunition there for someone to write a story on the back of it. But look, we haven't kept a clean sheet in I think 13 games in all competitions up until Sunday. So it was really good to get the clean sheet. Really good to get the win. And I was talking on Twitter actually just a few days ago that it's about time where everything just fell for us and we slapped a team. And I know 3-0 is not really a huge drubbing, but we've not had too many 3-0s this season. In fact, it might only be one of 2 3-0s that we've had. So in that sense, it's the perfect time. 4 days in advance of our biggest game, after a game at home where we struggled against Prague and we just couldn't create things. And again, because of lineup, you talked about Willie and you talked about, our setup that day. I think Arteta will take a lot of confidence from that. And it goes throughout the team. So Leno, keeping a clean sheet, making a couple of good saves. The centre-backs, I thought Pablo Mari played really well. Obviously, Xhaka, playing at left-back, we won't see him there. Chambers can take a lot of great confidence from that game. I thought Partey had one of his better games. And as crazy as this sounds, we spent a fortune on him last summer. He's not really hit the heights that we probably would have expected by now. He's had some fitness issues, some injury problems, I understand that. But he showed glimpses of brilliance. And if he can just go on that trajectory and peak maybe towards the end of the season, that's going to be massive for us. I think Ceballos has come into the firing line for some questions recently with some, hot and cold performances, more cold than hot, really, to be honest. So, he's probably feeling the benefit from that. Saka's, great, but the kid's just, we're burning him into the ground. I mean, he just needs to be managed carefully. And Lacazette, I mean, come on, what a world of good that's going to do for him. He knows that he's had games this season where he's been put in some amazing positions and he's just missed chances. So for him to grab a brace the way that he did, and you could tell in the celebration, actually, the first celebration, I think, he was delighted, but the second one, when he was put through on goal, he finished it beautifully, and he sort of, really sort of ran, fists clenched. You could tell what it meant to him. So I hope that he takes that as a real bounce of belief in himself, and I hope that Arteta plays him on Thursday, and I hope he can take that into the game, and if he gets that sniff in front of goal, he's got to finish it. And of course Martinelli, for a kid who's young, we forget that he's still a young boy. Not only is he developing football wise on the pitch, but he's developing physically. He's had a really hard injury to come back from, and your body at that age reacts in very different ways, and the rehab process is a very long one. So we have to manage expectations as much as we want to see him play every game, every week. It's been a really frustrating kind of return for him, but to see him play with such energy and such happiness, and to get him on the score sheet, I think that's going to do him the world of good. So whether or not he's ready for Thursday, like he talked about in his post-match interview, he's going to be there, and Arteta knows that he can call upon him, and I hope he does.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with all of that. It's really the entire team, isn't it? It's the entire team. You could pick out a couple of, individuals based on like maybe recent performances or whatever, but it's really the entire team needed to feel like they could win a game before the most important game on Thursday. There's about 37 of you guys watching right now. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I want to see 37 likes on the video, or else I'm not going to be a happy girl. But let's roll it back a little bit to Lacazette, because I just think it's just an interesting conversation because he's such a divisive figure. But I think that there's so many layers to why his career is what it is at Arsenal. In the 31st minute, his goal, that was a beautiful team goal. Thomas to Lacazette to Saka, Ceballos, Lacazette finish. Beautiful one-touch football. How nice was that goal for you? Did it take you back to the Arsene Wenger days? How did you feel about it?
It was a magical goal. I mean, I don't think I appreciated it whilst I was watching it live. You're just caught up in the excitement. You're thinking, oh my God, the ball's gone through, chance, goal, and you just you lose yourself. But when they watched it on the replay, and the commentator, I think someone mentioned it about Arsene Wenger's raising a glass somewhere. Certainly the commentary that I was watching, it kind of hit home that actually it was a very, very nice goal. The movement, the deft touches outside the box, the little back flick from Ceballos and Lacazette to finish it, so beautifully. It was a very well worked goal, and it was reminiscent of Wenger ball. But that, truth be told, in the first few months that we had Arteta in charge, we were playing some really nice football. There was a lot of good build-up play. You've seen all the goal clips from, back far as Leno all the way through to Aubameyang netting. We're capable of it. We've just not seen too much of it this season. So it was a beautiful goal. And I'm really pleased that Lacazette was on the end of that, because when he works hard, it's clear for everyone to see, and he deserves that. And there are games where he does go missing, but I'm just pleased that he was on the score sheet on Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. I have such like I feel so bad for Lacazette sometimes. I just think I sympathize with how his career has went. He's given some of his best years to Arsenal, and he missed 2 really big chances against Slavia Prague, but he's our highest goal scorer this season with 13 goals in the Premier League. And he has 73 goal involvements in 124 appearances. It's pretty good. And he also got his 50th goal, yesterday as well. He went through a really bad goal drought last season after his ankle injury, where his away goals, had just kind of like dried up, and he came under like a lot of criticism. I remember it was like the exact opposite, where Aubameyang was the guy and Lacazette was like the worst guy ever, and it was just very much like, the devil and the angel type of thing. And now it's kind of like reversing a little bit. And one minute he can look so dangerous, and the next minute he can look so painfully out of form. If you had to rate Lacazette's career at Arsenal so far, or it's probably coming to an end. But out of 10, if you had to rate it, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, what would you give him?
Oh, Jess, even though you briefed me on the fact that we talk about Lacazette, hearing that question it makes me feel uncomfortable because it's such a difficult question to answer. Only because I think you're right. When he first came to the club, he came with such hype, such expectation, such a huge price tag. You know, the prince of sort of French football at Lyon, and he was doing really good stuff at Lyon. And if you watch the YouTube clips, like we all do, the variety of goal was so encouraging. You know, from shots outside the box to, you know, being the predator in the box, his link-up play, and he came with so much promise. And I think I would agree with you. I think there are times in his Arsenal career where he has hit some of those heights. I think he struggled with the pace of the Premier League. I think a lot of players do. That's not to say that Ligue 1 isn't competitive or whatever. It's just different. I also think the changes in manager and changes in style hasn't really helped. You know, he didn't get a full season under Arsene. You know, Emery football was interesting, and under Arteta, it's been a real tale of two stories. You know, the first few months under Arteta was like a fairy tale, winning the cup, you know, really turning the club around, and this last season has been quite challenging. So difficult. And then I suppose when you look at Lacazette, the player, on the ball, he's good. He's you know, he has a lot of finesse about him. He can score goals. He does. His work rate, I think, over the last 6 months has been quite impressive. Better than it ever was. But when he's not there, when he's having an off day, when he's not scoring goals, when he's almost overcomplicating things, he's not just bad. He's awful, and that's why it's so difficult to answer. And I've seen a couple of suggested scores for him out of 10. I mean, I think 7 or 8 is probably a bit generous. I think for a man who's scored 50 Premier League goals, like you said, who cost over £50 million, the return over those years you'd expect to be higher. He's never really been the main man at any club, so you know the team has been quite dysfunctional in those years. So you have to cut him some slack. So I think, look, you know, 6 out of 10, just because I think it's too cruel to say 4 or 5. I think that's a bit harsh. You have to consider the environment that he's been in, the 3 managers he's played under. The team has been on a negative spiral, as it were, for 3 or 4 years. So I hope that's not too harsh. I hope that's not too generous. But I think 6 out of 10 is probably how I feel. And then and finally, on the point about selling him, and even someone like Bellerin, if you look at the squad, you know, these are the assets that have some sort of value attached to them. You know, we could probably sell Bellerin because he has 4 or 5 years left to give at the top level of the game, and he's a hugely sellable asset. And you look at Lacazette, what is he, 27?
He's 29.
Before all the Arsenal fans start 29, right? Okay, so you know, he's probably got 2-3 years at this sort of top level, but maybe a bit longer. But whether that's with us or not, yeah, there might be a club out there, Atletico perhaps, or another club that might be willing to spend 20-30 million pounds on him. I don't know. So yeah, I think it could be his last season for Arsenal. He does blow hot and cold, but I think I'll have to go with a 6 out of 10. And Shane's just given me the backing for that, so quite happy with that.
Yeah, you know, there's a mixed bag. There's 7, 6 sevens, you know, an 8 in there, 5 in there, you know. I guess my whole thing with Lacazette is I don't see really the player per se. I see the lack of squad building and the poor job that we did over, you know, in squad building over the years. His time at Arsenal has really coincided with the dark period of the club as of recent, you know, so I always take that into account. And the assignment was to be a better striker than Giroud, because our biggest, I think, criticism of Giroud is that he would have these goal droughts mid-season that, you know, hurt us very badly. So we're looking for a clinical goal scorer that could get us 20 to 30 goals per season. And yes, at Lyon, he was, you know, Lacazette was able to do that. But you have to take into account that he was taking all the penalties. A lot of those goals were penalties, you know, and we don't really take that into consideration. And the League 1 is really different than the Premier League, you know, so when you take all those things into consideration, And the fact that we didn't really build the squad around him, 6 months later, you go and you buy Aubameyang, and you expect him to, that first of all, that is without saying a bad word, it's like a mind F. It's like, here I am, I'm the main man, you brought me in 50 million, I'm the marquee signing, and then you bring in Aubameyang. What does that say to him? They're both center forwards at that point, so I don't know. I just look at it and I think about the fact that we brought in Aubameyang because we messed up everything with Alexis. And Alexis and Aubameyang are not the same type of players. It's not like for like, so if you bring in a winger, similar to Alexis, does Lacazette feel better? Is the squad being built in a more cohesive, balanced way? Probably. So when I look at Lacazette, all I see is a failure in squad building. He may not have hit the heights that we really wanted him to, but I think the assignment was given to somebody that really couldn't uphold that. And if we either should have waited and got Aubameyang or built the side around Lacazette and got in a winger. But if we go to like, okay, sell, keep, resign, all that kind of stuff, I think the only two options are to sell or to let him run his deal down if somebody doesn't give us what we feel like he's worth. If you offered me 15 million for Lacazette right now, I'd bite your hand off. He's 29 years old, going to be 30 going into the summer, and he's an up and down type of player. So this is our last chance to get something from a $50 million investment that has not really worked out. So 15, 20 million, I'm biting your hand off for it. I really feel like there's so many layers to Lacazette that we really can't just say he was a failure. But if I have to give him a score between 1 and 5, I think I have to be pretty much in the same ballpark as you guys and say 6. But that's not to say that I don't think Lacazette is a quality player. He was just bad, wrong place, wrong time, wrong era, wrong everything, so that's just kind of how I feel about it, oof. Lacazette, I feel so bad for saying that, but I think he's such a better player than we give him credit for. But here's some nice little comments. So Shane Lowe says 6 is fair, particularly because he's always had to compete for a place with Aubameyang. Exactly. Let's see. But Henry and Bergkamp played in the same side sometimes. So what's the problem with that? Do you want to kind of, attack that one?
Yeah, look, I think Henry and Bergkamp are two very, very different players, and you have a partnership there that complements each other like bread and butter, right? You wouldn't eat one without the other. And I think they also played, and you made the salient point, they played in a very functional team. They had a manager who was fresh, who had so many ideas, stuff that the Premier League had never seen. And I think they just hit it off. They clicked. And, you have to think about Bergkamp and Henry, both prior to joining Arsenal, were essentially flops in their own teams. Bergkamp was having a torrid time in Italy, as was Thierry Henry. So, look, sometimes it clicks. I think a lot of what you said is absolutely valid. I think, when you talk about him joining Arsenal at a very dysfunctional time, club in transition, let alone team. And actually, I hadn't thought about the personnel. We were rebuilding. We have been rebuilding for a number of years, and we've not addressed that creative. We had the whole Ozil fallout. We went 6 months without having a number 10. It then took an Emil Smith Rowe debut against Chelsea to really get Arteta thinking like that, and that makes life very difficult for a striker. So. Actually, yeah, you've probably swayed me into thinking that maybe I was a bit too harsh, but I think I'm in conclusion, I think I'm similar to you that, look, if we have a chance to part company with him this summer, he's someone we can get some money for. I'm sure he's on hefty wages, so entertaining a new contract at that age of 29, if he's 29, is probably not the wisest thing. And yeah, freshen it up a little bit. So yeah, gosh, you've got me thinking there.
Well, speaking of freshening it up, somebody that could maybe come in and do a job is somebody that already exists within the Arsenal, squad setup in the academy is Balogun. Last time we spoke, I don't think Balogun had re-signed yet. So let me just get your overall feelings of how you feel about him staying at Arsenal for the foreseeable future.
So I think I'm obviously really excited because there's been a lot of talk about Balogun, and the academy and the people that you probably read from and that we hear from. They're all very hyped about him. They think he's a big talent, and for him to be wanted by 14, 16, 18 European clubs is quite telling. It's not often that a player is going to be touted by so many clubs. I'm really excited. In the very limited game time that I've seen him, I think I like his style of play. I like his physique. I like the fact that he's been at the club for a long time. Obviously the right age profile. Physically, he still has a lot of growing to do, and that is going to be a good thing for us. And he scored a couple of neat goals. And if you look at the footage that he's of his goals that he puts up on his social media, of his goals in the academy, he almost looks like the complete striker at that age. So I'm really excited. And you know what, Jess? Sometimes you look at a young player, and I had this with Cesc and with Jack, and sometimes you see a player and you just have to see him for half an hour, and you just know that he's got something about him. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert scout, because I have got it wrong in the past, of course, and it's very obvious and very simple for fans to do.
You thought Sanogo was going to be good, didn't you?
Yeah, it was the debut 3 or 4 goals in the
the next Henri, but no, go ahead, keep going.
I still cannot get over the fact that big man Wenger played Sanogo against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. I still, the banter era of this club is relentless. But my point there is, I look at Nketiah. I'm quite public about my opinions on Nketiah. I love the fact that he's an academy boy, as it were. We saved him from another club, and he's come through the ranks, as it were. But I just don't see it. And he's played a lot of games. He had a decent loan spell at Leeds. I just can't see him being a starter or a regular at Arsenal Football Club, whereas he's a man of mystery, a kid of mystery almost. I'm really excited to see what he does in the very short game time that we've seen him. Nice touch, physically strong, good finisher. And look, if we've offered him a crazy contract, which the rumours will tell you that money has basically swayed him, then that means that Arteta really believes in him, and he wouldn't have signed unless he's going to be promised some sort of game time. So he needs some game time. I'd like to see him get some games, even maybe before the end of this season. Get some time on the bench, and next summer. And as he grows older, and as he becomes physically much more robust, much more physically stronger, it's going to be really interesting to see what sort of striker he turns into. So really excited to answer that.
Yeah, me too. I feel like, I know some people are like, you've never seen him play. I know you've never seen him play. I haven't. Besides like the Europa League game where he was there for like 5 minutes and he scored, and some clips. No, I haven't seen him play. But let's just keep it real. Like, if a club like Arsenal goes through almost a year trying to get you to re-sign, and you've never really played for the first team, you got to be quite a talent, and they're taking a risk, and they're I'm sure a bunch of different coaches have watched him, including Arteta, and said, yeah, we need to keep this guy around. Whether he becomes like a full first team member, kind of like Saka, where he really contributes to the first team, or, he just fills in, when Lacazette leaves or whatever, or we sell him on for a fee. The good thing is that we're doing the right things to protect our assets. And the academy is supposed to serve the first team. They could do that in multiple different ways, like Willock, filling in squad roles, or again, being sold for a fee, or becoming like Saka. But we have to be smarter with the academy. And I think this is a good, besides, obviously, signing Saka, trying to get Emile Smith-Rowe on another contract. This is a big step for us, just going in the right direction. And I like the thought process around what we're trying to do. I personally think this is somebody that could save us some money for the summer transfer window and allow us to overhaul our striker situation, which is right now very confusing and unbalanced, and allow us to kind of like put that off for a little bit and give him some time to grow and to get some experience while we increase his value, which I think is a good thing. I think Martinelli and Balogun can easily replace Lacazette and Nketiah in the squad. Yes, they're young players and they're going to need time, but ultimately at a certain point, they're going to need to get bedded in, right? So I think this is a good thing. What was I going to ask you? I had like one more question, but about Balogun. But yeah, you said you would like to see him before the end of the season. But next season, do you see him as just like sell Lacazette and just bring him straight in? Or do you think Arteta may try to loan him out? There's been some suggestions about that. How do you think is the right way to manage him? I mean, they have to have given him some assurances, but how do we do this in the right way?
It's always interesting with a young player because you have to look at the position. And obviously, we've taken a certain stance on Saliba, for example. He's young, he's a centre back, and he was loaned out immediately without actually having much chance in the team. And I think that's a real travesty. And if you look at the performances he's been putting in France, again, different league, French football aficionados will tell you that he's doing really well and that we were absolute mugs to send him out. The only reason why I would be tempted to send out Balogun would be if a club came in and said, look, we can guarantee that he's going to play 40 games, subject to injury, 30 games, whatever, an X number of games, and he will play every week as our main man in the position that you eventually want him to play in. I think I would be open to that. However, we talk about the contract that he's just got. He's obviously been knocking on the door. He wants game time. I think if we were to sign him up on a contract and then send him out to the Championship or perhaps a smaller or a lesser team in the Premier League, and let's face it, based on this season, there's not too many of those, Jess. I'd like him to stay at Arsenal, and I think under the mentoring or the coaching of Aubameyang, he can really learn how to finesse his finishing, his forward game. I think there's also a lot of value to be said in having that youth and that energy around the setup. When you've got someone like Balogun who's come through the ranks, who knows the club inside out. I think we all heard Aziz's interview prior to the Europa League, him sort of say, the snippets around on Twitter if you guys haven't, but things like, I've been at this club since I was 5 and it means everything to me and I will fight, I will do whatever I can for this club. Look, easy things to say, but actually when you've got someone so young and so vibrant, it comes out and you can see that it means the world to them. So listen, we're a club in a bit of transition. We're not competing for the title anytime soon. If Balogun thinks, he's a big boy and he's ready for it, let's chuck him into the mix. Give him a few games this season, give him a few games next season. He's obviously not going to be asked to lead the line on a regular basis. That's going to be Aubameyang. But bring him in, do what Sir Alex and Arsene used to do back in the day, 15, 20 minutes here and there. When the game's up, when the game's won, like last night would have been a classic example. 2-0 up. Bring on Balogun for 10, 15 minutes and just see what he can do. So I'm really interested, but it's a bit delicate because he shares the same agent as Nketiah. So what happens with Eddie in the summer is going to be really interesting. But I'd love to see more of Balogun. I think we all would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm all about the rebooted Project Youth. I'm always about that. I like having the younger kids, like you said, the vibrance, the energy that they give, and having, one of my favorite players in Arsenal, like I've been watching for a while, but one of my favorite players is Jack Wilshere. I just think, I know it's more about what could have been with him versus what he actually did, but I just think he just bled Arsenal in a way that like the players that you bring from other teams or whatever just don't have. And I think it's a part of the fabric of Arsenal, having players that come through the academy and love it and play for the shirt, and we miss that. The less we have of those players, I think the foundation is a lot less solidified. If you think back in like 2015, 16, when we kind of should have won the league, I think the best part about that team was the foundation of Arsenal, like academy graduates and players that have been around the team for a while, like Ramsey, Jack, Ox, Theo, even though he came from Southampton. I think that made the difference. I think that made the combination of them plus the Ozils and the Santis and those types. I think all of that together is what makes Arsenal good. But if you have too much, of the outside players and nobody that really understands what Arsenal is about, I don't care if you watched Arsenal when you were younger or whatever. If you weren't there, then I don't think it's the same. And I think that's why we like seeing Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka in the lineup, because it just feels better. It just feels more pure, so of course I'm super excited.
They care, Jess. They care because they've been at the environment for so long. They want to point they want to prove a point to their mates that they've grown up within the academy. You know, when they get the call up to be part of the squad. When Emil Smith-Rowe came on to play against Chelsea and he started that game, yeah, imagine the excitement of not only him but his entire cohort in the academy. And they care. And I think actually a lot is said about you have to find the right balance, right? So you can have all the young players, the hungry players, the energetic players, the ones who really want to prove something and make it at the club. But you have to have the right balance at the other end of the spectrum. So you need to have your Aubameyangs, you need to have your Santi Cazorlas, you need to have your Aaron Ramseys, your Theo Walcotts at that age. So look, you know, Arteta's got some thinking to do, some juggling to do. But I think offensively, if we were to hold on to Pepe, obviously keep Saka. I know you've talked hypothetical situations about selling Saka on Twitter in the past, but you know, and I understand why. But if you keep Balogun and release maybe Nketiah and sell Lacazette, you know, we've still got some good talent there. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that sort of unfolds. But you're right, nothing beats an academy playing and making it into the team, and you want to see more of that.
100%. There's about 45 of you guys watching. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. I see a comment that I'm not excited about. Mark, what is this? He says, sorry to say, I don't think Wilshere, forget the injuries, had it. He was a superstar as a kid, but he was not title-winning level. Same as Chamberlain. Personally, much preferred Ramsey. That hurts, Mark. That really hurts. I think there's Team Ramsey and there's definitely Team Wilshere. I don't know. I personally think Wilshere was more talented than Ramsey. I know some people think Ramsey was it. He scored some really iconic goals, but just off the top of your head, Wilshere or Ramsey, who's better? Talent-wise, who's better?
That is hard. So in terms of natural talent, I think I saw Jack do things that Ramsey just couldn't do. But I think Ramsey had the graft, the desire, of course, the setback with that horrific injury that he suffered at Stoke made him want to prove himself even more. He had a different sort of appetite for the game, a different hunger. Look, Jack got unlucky with injuries as well during his time at the club. You can't deny that. He was poorly managed and soft tissue injuries have killed him. But I think in terms of talent, you know, that season, his standout season, and Arsenal fans always harp on about that, but it was a magical season. He really was outstanding. He was a natural talent who sadly didn't get to live up to the levels that we all thought he was going to have because of these horrible injuries, and it's just the way it was. So yeah, I think Jack was the more naturally talented player. I don't think it should have been a choice as to whether it was Ramsey or Wilshere. I think we could have enjoyed them both, a bit like Cesc and Nasri. And, you know, those two players also made a huge difference. You know, when you had those players like Cesc, Nasri, Ramsey and Wilshere, I mean, gosh, I feel like crying because that really was the heyday. Yeah, they were brilliant, brilliant footballers. And yeah, it's just a real shame that we don't have anything like that now, do we? I mean, we just don't have that sort of, that technically gifted young player coming out from the academy midfield. You know, we've got Willock, who's having a good time at Newcastle, but I think if we get north of 10, 15 million for him, I'd probably take that. You know, send him to a Newcastle, send him to a Bournemouth type club, with respect. But you know, there was a certain excitement about Jack, Jess. You know, and he loved Arsenal Football Club. I had the privilege of meeting him a few times when he was playing for us, and he would talk Arsenal, he would sleep Arsenal, he loved this club, and my heart breaks for the guy because he could have been so good.
Yeah, I watch Bournemouth games just to see this boy play. I don't care. I love him, but I completely 100% agree with what you're saying. Like the type of players that were coming out of the academy at that point were really special, you know, and I think Emil Smith-Rowe and Saka have that same, you know, gravitas around them as well. But, you know, it's just a little bit different. You know, Wilshere he was so good. Like, I'll never let it go. He was so good. Like, and there's this picture, I'm going to find it and put it up on Twitter after this, of him juggling the ball like at 15 or 16 years old with Cesc and Danielson and somebody else was there, like Robert or somebody. And it was insane. I'm like, look at this little kid, because he was so confident. I just love that about him. But you guys in the chat box, let us know. Wilshere or Ramsey, talent-wise, obviously they're both brilliant, but just for fun's sake, let's just have fun with it. But something else kind of exciting that happened yesterday. Let me find it and put it up on the screen. Give me one sec. See. That pass was brilliant.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? What were you doing when you saw the pass? Like, what were you thinking? Like, wasn't it amazing? I love it.
Mate, again, it's one of those things where watching the game, you don't realize how good it is when you're watching it live. Like, the ball went through, and all I got up off the sofa and I was like, go on, Laka. Missed it. And then he scored. And then when they showed the replay and like the little feint of the shoulder and Thomas Partey turning and moving, I was like, did he even do that? Mate, it was so good to see, Jess. Like, we haven't had a player like that. And, it's funny because they were talking about Pogba doing it last night. I don't know if you watched Match of the Day too, where you are. And Jermaine Genius was doing the analysis of Pogba about how he was so influential in the game against Spurs yesterday. And it was about the feinting of the body movements and using that strength and playing through the lines. And it was so good to see Partey do that. That's exactly why we paid the money. Brad, you're absolutely on point. I want to see more of that. I want to see him control and dominate games. I want to see him, turn like that and play like that and just be as aggressive and confident with the ball like that. So, look, when it happened, brilliant. Twitter was having everyone was like, oh my God, that turn, that pass, that assist. And, as the Lone Star Londoner says, you cannot write off the finish. The finish was brilliant. He does them with the eyes. I don't know if you guys saw the replay from behind the goal. He's opened up to shoot to Ramsdale's left, and he's done him with the eyes and put it in the other corner. Brilliant finish. I was so happy.
I loved it. Like, when I woke up this morning, the first thing I did was I turned over, grabbed my phone. I was like, let me see that turn again. Let me see that pass again. It was so good.
What are your thoughts on Partey? Because obviously we paid a lot of money for him. He's not really hit the heights, in my opinion. But do you see that there? Do you think he's going to be the main man? What are your thoughts, Jess?
Yeah, so I'm the president of, Party FC. So I'm a huge fan, stan, whatever you want to call me. But, I just think when I think back to the great Arsenal sides of old, you have to have a player of that quality in your midfield. You need to have an engine. And I've been calling for Thomas Partey to come to Arsenal for 2 years. So when we finally got the deal over the line, I don't want to say I was very overwhelmed, overcome with emotion, because I was like, we finally doing it. We finally gotten players of the profile that we've been missing for over a decade. And I was super excited, but I understand why people are a little bit underwhelmed or disappointed with what the results of him have been so far, because he hasn't been available enough. The injuries that he's had, or the sustained injuries, the hamstring and the pulled thigh and all that kind of stuff, have just, it's been sad to watch, because he really didn't have any sort of injury record before he came to Arsenal. And when I talked to Dr. Raj about it, he was just saying that basically once you get injured, you can heal from the injury, but then you need to build up your fitness again. And I think that's what we're seeing, is a lack of fitness. And what we really need from him is that running ability, his ability to close down players and, to run from side to side and cover space. And we haven't really seen that. Again, like you said, we've seen glimpses. And I think the glimpses for me are enough to know that player is there. But we also have to take into consideration that, look at the team that he came from. Not that I'm saying that Atletico is such a better team than us, but they have more quality. And they have a system that they played for years under Simeone. And you're coming into a completely different system where Arteta wants to play expansive football. And we're in an imbalanced squad that doesn't play well consistently. So I think his lack of consistency coincides with the fact that the team is inconsistent. I am not worried about him one bit. I think next season, when we get him, but potentially the proper partner that he deserves, a creative midfielder, and we start from scratch from the very beginning of the season, we'll see a better Thomas Partey. He said before he came to Arsenal that he wanted to defend like Michael Essien and attack like Yaya Toure. And I think that's the type of player that we need. When El Neni came into the game yesterday, you saw Thomas be able to push up, and impose himself in the offense a lot more. And I think that's what we need. We need a more defensive-minded midfielder to sit in deep so he can be that Michael Essien / Yaya Toure that he really wants to be. I'm not worried about it, but I completely understand the frustration because you think, oh, we spend $45 million on a player, deadline day signing. He's going to change absolutely everything about this team. But the team has been poor this season, so players that are usually consistent, like Aubameyang, Thomas Partey, players like that, players that should be at a certain level are just not hitting those. And I have to just chalk that up to the team just not really playing well. But again, I'm not worried about it. I think he'll be fine. Love the player, love the profile. And yeah, he's a world-class midfielder. Let's just hope that he shows that, but that's my thing. I say it on almost every single stream because somebody's always like, well, he didn't play well today. I'm like, you guys, just calm down. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. The game that he played against Slavia Prague was devastating, but he played okay in the game yesterday. So let's just give him time. I think a lot of players need to reset, get a preseason and under their belt and start over, but for you, what would you like to see next to Thomas Partey, moving forward? I know Xhaka has been doing well, but, is there a player that you've seen, that you're like, wow, that might be a good partner for Thomas, moving forward?
So I've got a couple of answers to this. Firstly, I think it depends on where we see Thomas Partey playing, right? If he's going to be your number 8, so your ball carrier, playing, box to box almost, playing those lines, playing behind a sort of creator, then you probably need someone, he is a baller, you probably need someone who's going to sit tight and just let him do that. And like you talked about, El Neni kind of coming on and letting Partey go advanced. So in terms of defensive midfielders, I mean, I love Yves Bissouma. I love Bissouma. I think he's I think he's going to be too expensive for us. Anguissa from Fulham also looks quite interesting. Ndidi, obviously, but I think we're talking, you've got to be a top club with lots of money to go for him if he's gonna leave where he is. So there are options out there. I'd like to see a defensive midfielder. I'd like to see Xhaka stay. I think he has a role in the team. I think he's actually a very good player, and with the right setup, I think he can flourish as well. But I think the second answer to my question is that I don't think there's too much harm in having options. It's very much a squad game. We're a big team, big club, looking to compete across different competitions. And personally, we haven't talked about it before, Jess. I certainly haven't talked about it with you before, but reintegrating Guendouzi back into the squad is a great shout. Maybe we'll talk about him before we close. But Guendouzi is I think a very talented boy. Carries the ball well. Quite a progressive midfielder. Can sit in the middle. And I think if you had an option, if you had that sort of that pool of players like Bissouma, Partey, Xhaka, Guendouzi, I think you've got a nice foundation there for quite a strong midfield. So there's options, but I think it all comes down to where or how Mikel Arteta wants to use him. And if he's going to use him as a number 8, well, then we need a number 6 to kind of sit in behind and sit next to him. And if he's going to be that deep player like he was for large parts of the game yesterday, maybe we don't need that defensive midfielder. But it also comes across as Locatelli. Lots of people have been talking about him. And Soumare as well, who I think is out of contract in a year or something. So he'd be available for not so much money. But all depends on setup. All depends on opposition as well, Jess. There are games where you just want to sit tight, hold out the big games, so we need a range of people in our midfield. Lots of comments coming in.
Well, 100%. I think if you're talking about wanting to acquire Odegaard, then the options need to be for the center midfield position. If we decide to move in that direction, will have to be more, I think, on the Anguissa, if Fulham get relegated side, more on the Soumare side, more obscure type of under the radar signings. I think Bissouma and Ndidi, players like that, are going to be completely out of our range, but that doesn't mean that we can't recruit well. I think there's this myth that we're not going to be able to recruit certain types of players because of blah, 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 Europe. I've seen teams that don't have Europe ever be able to recruit better than us. It's about doing the work instead of cutting corners by using agents and things like that. So that's Edu's job, and they need to figure it out. But I mean, they could also cut corners by bringing some players back. And this is just in different positions. You know, you bring back maybe Guendouzi. I know that seems like a relationship that's not a good one. But at the same time, it's like, if nobody buys him, he's going to be running his deal down anyway. You know, so you could bring him back in and see. I mean, he's 21 years old, a young, you know, I think you talked about it, a young father. He needs to mature, but, you know, could he really be that much worse than El Neni? You know, you have players like Saliba who must come back. Arteta, if you're watching, Saliba must come back, you know, and that'll save you money for the right side of center back. So we'll see what happens. But just on the Arteta kind of, you know, before we get to like just a couple of questions, you know, there's a lot of comparisons with Emery that are starting to surface. You know, they kind of went away for a while, but now they're coming back. And I think it was Orbinho put out the tally of the points that Arteta has acquired in comparison to Emery since I think it's like 51 matches played. Emery has 25 wins, Arteta has 22. Emery had 13 draws, Arteta had 12. Emery has 13 losses, Arteta has 17 losses, and overall Emery has 88 points and Arteta has 78. The comparisons keep coming, but I don't know about you, but I feel better about where we're going, even though the results are worse, you know, with Arteta versus Emery. I think I don't know what we were doing with Emery. You said it was interesting. I think I could find a couple of different words to describe what it was like being under Emery. But, you know, what does Arteta have to do to win over some of the faith of some of the fan base that feel like results are the only thing that matters? You know, does he have to win the Europa League? I mean, we know he's not going anywhere regardless, but, you know, what do you think fans need to see? Is it just results or what? You know, because the comparisons to Emery just seem a little like we're grasping for straws, you know, so.
Well, he needs to win games, you know, and not lose so many. I know it sounds really simplistic, but, you know, we've lost 12 games in the league this season. And I know it's a very odd season, you know, it's a pandemic, there are no fans, you know, players maybe not as fit or as sharp, and the competition of the league and VAR and so many different factors. But bottom line, you know, it's a results business at the end of the day. And whilst there are people like perhaps you and I, Jess, who can see some visual improvements, you know, we do have a better structure. We are conceding fewer shots. We are defensively better from set pieces. We are, you know, we have a game plan. You know, we can turn up to the big games, and actually, you know, it's not as scary as they once were. You know, even under my hero, Arsene Wenger. I think there are definite improvements. I think where Arteta has really, really shot himself is paralysing the team by maintaining his stance on players like Ozil and Guendouzi, by not having a number 10. When Emil Smith-Rowe came back into the team, it was clear that we needed that connector in that final third. And, you know, I'm so glad that it's happened, because now he seems to be, you know, going down that route. And of course, Odegaard has come in and played that role. But, you know, if we're getting back to basics, we just need to stop losing and stop playing like dickheads sometimes. Be a bit more aggressive, work a bit harder, be better at football, and just win games. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not more complex than that. I think in terms of your question about Europa League or bust, or I think that's what I heard anyway.
Pretty much, yeah.
Was, yeah, you're probably right. I think there is a fan divide, not as big as it was under Arsene Wenger, not as big as it was towards the end of, you know, Emery's awful tenure, in my opinion. I think there is a split, and I think there are a number of fans who are, I wouldn't say enjoying or relishing because they want Arteta out, but I think there are a number of fans leaning towards, do you know what, the guy just can't be backed anymore, and actually he's not the right man for us, and that's perfectly fine. But I think there are subtle things in this team that I take comfort in and think, do you know what, actually with the right personnel and with some spend in the summer, he could do it. And, you know, it goes back to the game plan. You know, we won the FA Cup against all odds last year. we are 4 games away from the Champions League. You know, if we turn up on Thursday, and if all ifs, I know, I appreciate that, just like any other fan. But if we turn up on Thursday and we can get through that, then we come up against Mr. Emery and his team. Then, of course, it could be a final against United. There's a lot of barriers to overcome. But we are 4 games away. And, you know, why can't we win the Europa League? You know, on our day, and I know it's on our day, and we're talking about ifs and ons and, well, you know, any other word you can think about. If we can win the Europa League, all will be forgiven, all will be forgotten very, very quickly. So that has to be our main aim. I think that'll win back a lot of the fans. There might still be some skeptics amongst us, you know, even though he's won 2 trophies in 2 seasons, if we get there. But look, it's, you know, football, you're never going to please everybody, Jess. You know that, I know that. Arsene Wenger couldn't please everybody, and he's the greatest of all time. So
don't make me dream. Don't make me dream, because every single time I let my mind kind of drift, and I'm like, yeah, we could be in Champions League.
I'm a romantic, Jess.
You know, I could be hearing, you know, what is it? The champions, instead of, oh, because I'm sick of hearing that, you know, for reals. Like, I'm so done with it. But, you know, at the same time.
That has to be your clip, by the way, when you advertise the podcast. That's got to be your 10-second segment, you singing the theme tunes. I'm a romantic, and I want us to win. I'm not overly optimistic, but, you know, while you're in it, you've just got a chance, and you got to believe in it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, under Emery, we lost, obviously, to Chelsea. But, I mean, like, if it really came down to us or United, I know that United are towards the top of the Premier League. I get it. I know they have quality. But I fancy us to beat them. I do. We have juju over them. Like, they can't beat us. They haven't beat us yet under Arteta. They haven't scored a goal on us under Arteta. Like, I think we have mind game over them, you know. But even Emery, squad's okay. He knows how to set them up. But I still think we can. So this comment every time.
I hope so. You have got good teeth. You've got really good pearly white.
Thank you. I'm like, they're so like just out there, but I mean, this is just so funny. Some of you guys are hilarious.
By the way, Jess, I have to apologize for my horrific lighting. So obviously it's just become dark in London, but also we're in the middle of a house move. So I'm living in a guest room where I don't have my own setup, and this is
terrible.
I look like a creep in a really weird room. So my apologies, everybody, for my awful lighting. I will invest in some real tech.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So let's get to the questions. We have just a couple, you know. Here's one. Tony Rosanda says, you mentioned we need a good backup left back, but after yesterday's game, do you think we can make do with a defensive backup left back instead of a Tierney light? Love the question. I'll let you go first, because I don't think we've talked about left back cover, you know.
So it's a really good question, Tony. Something that I think about quite a lot, because obviously we've got Cedric and we let Kolasinac go, who is, you know, a bombing up the pitch sort of left back, quite careless at times. But I think it all boils down to how Arteta's going to play. You know, quite simply, we've relied on our attacks coming from the left-hand side of our game. And it took Tierney to get injured for us to realise, oh shit, you know, we don't have the same ammunition. So we need to think carefully about, well, you know, having a Xhaka is just not going to work long term. I think we've talked about that. Even a Cedric, as good as he is at right back and as capable as he is of giving us cover and chambers, I think you do need a proper left back to come in and be that cover. You know, we were linked with, who was the chap at Southampton? Bertrand. You know, in the summer, amazed we didn't, you know, just pay the little bit that we kind of needed just to have him as cover. But I think, look, if you're going to be a team that builds your attacks down the left-hand side or the right-hand side, and you get your fullbacks going right into that final third, you can't afford to only have one fit left back that does that, because it hampers your whole game when that guy goes missing. And with Tierney, we know, you know, he's not as injury prone as people make him out to be, but we do know that he will have spells, 1 or 2 in the season, where he's out for a few weeks, and that can cost you. And I pray to God. I know Arteta, Charles Watts said yesterday that Arteta said that Tierney's out for the rest of the season. And if that's the case, then, you know, we could be in trouble. So you know, Tony, great question. I don't think we can get away with, you know, square pegs in round holes. I think we need proper left back cover, proper right back cover, both sides.
Yeah. Well, if you've been here before, you know how I feel about the left back thing. So Kieran Tierney is, I mean, I love Thomas Partey, but Kieran Tierney is by far my favorite Arsenal player right now. I love him so much. Like, I'm obsessed with the kid, but I mean, I agree with you. He's not as injury prone as we think he is. A lot of his, if you look in the injury records, it's not a lot of it is, it's not all like soft tissue or anything like that. It's impact injuries, strange things, that just happen because you play hard, but if we can anticipate that he's going to be out a little bit more than maybe our right back, then I think the level of the left back needs to be better than what people are saying. If we're going to build everything through the left-hand side, like you said, or down the right, I think the cover needs to be not just somebody who can do a job. It needs to be somebody with some quality. There's just certain types of players that I look at and I'm like, no, like Bertrand. Like, I know that he could probably do a job, but is it worth bringing in a 30-something-year-old player that's going to want big wages and a long contract? That level is probably Kolasinek's level, maybe a little better. No, I don't think so. So I think we need to be smart. I'd rather us go into the market and maybe find a young player, that will want to grow at Arsenal. I think that this is where the academy comes in, and would be nice if we could plan long term to have players from our academy coming into these positions. Obviously, Per hasn't been there long enough, but that's a long-term thing that I would like to see, like players coming through the academy filling in these squad positions. So we're not bringing in Bertrands and Cedrics and Williams and people like that. But we definitely need to address it, because not only do we need somebody to cover for Tierney, but we need to protect him because he's an asset. And if we can get somebody in that's good enough where if he's at 70%, that person is at 100%, we would pick them over Tierney. That's better. But I think sometimes when they looked at it, they were like, well, I have 100% Kolasinac, but I have a 50% Tierney. Let's see if Tierney can play with one leg, because, Kolasinac, just his level was so much lower, so I think getting the level a little bit closer is important, but definitely left back cover is needed. This is a good question, because this is honestly what I was going to ask you anyway. If Saka is not fit to start the second leg, who starts in your front 3/4? So that would mean that it would be Willian, Aubameyang, Lacazette, Pepe, and Martinelli available. Let's say Smith Rowe and Saka are not available. Who's your front 3/4 scenario?
Gosh. I think Lacazette has to start for me because I think he deserves it. I think he's played well against Sheffield United, and I think Aubameyang, as good as we know he can be on his day, he's just not right at the moment. There's something quite not right, and maybe he just needs that impact off the bench, get a goal, boost his confidence. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Premier League footballer needs a boost in confidence, but we're all human. So Lacazette for me up front. Pepe, as hot and cold as he is such a natural talent, and he can make something out of nothing. He is as frustrating as he is scintillating. And so because he can create something out of nothing, I would go Pepe. Martinelli for me is a no-brainer. We've talked about him. The energy, the vibrancy, the graft, the determination to keep running in behind, the excitement every time he gets the ball. I think, again, building on what he did last night, I think he deserves, he warrants a place in that team. So for me, it'd be Martinelli on the left, Lacazette centrally, Pepe on the right. Who would play the number 10 role? So, Saka's not there, if Emil Smith-Rowe's not there, if Odegaard's not there as well. Is that what you're telling me?
One of them is going to be available. I have to believe so.
So whoever is available will I think,
will play there.
Well, and that's what I do. If none of them are available, then we might be looking at another sort of Ceballos playing advanced type thing like yesterday.
I'd rather Ceballos than Willian, if I'm honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't want William anywhere near the starting lineup for Thursday. That would be my three. So anyone at number 10 who is a number 10, or who can play at number 10, sorry. better than Willian, and those front three would be Martinelli, Lacazette, and Pepe. Would you agree or would you disagree?
Yeah, I start exactly who started against Sheffield United. Keep the ball rolling. I'm all about keep that ball rolling. Don't start tinkering. He's found something that works. And my only issue with the lineup against Slavia Prague initially was there was no running power in behind. Lacazette needs to be able to drop deep, and we need to be able to play little nice combinations and get free and then pass the ball into space in behind. Where is Willian running to? He's not running into space. He's not running, period. The kid doesn't press. He doesn't do anything, so having him on the left-hand side, I think, was dead. It just didn't make sense. But if you have Martinelli and Pepe on either side of Lacazette, and then you bring in Aubameyang if things get crazy, then I think you're fine. And then whoever, like you said, is available of Odegaard and Emil Smith-Rowe/Saka plays in the 10 role, and we win the game. I believe that's how we win the game, and just don't do anything silly, but last question. I think this is interesting. I just want to pop this in here. Yo-Yo's hilarious. Good questions always from Yo-Yo. If KSC were to provide greater funding, do you buy competition or replacement for Leno? So he's been coming under a lot of criticism lately, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this.
I don't think the criticism is fair, actually. I quite like Leno. I think he's a reasonably solid goalkeeper. I think he's a good shot stopper. I think he is being forced to play out the back, and at first you could tell he wasn't so comfortable, and in certain games and certain scenarios he still doesn't look comfortable. But I think he's a good goalkeeper. And look, £20 million, you look at what 70, £80 million gets you, and you get an Alisson. You get a Courtois is probably a bad example, but you get an Oblak. You've got some really top tier goalkeepers. And I don't think Leno is that. I think he accepts that. I don't think he's in that sort of elite category, but he's as good as we're going to get. So if I were to get a replacement, my honest answer to that, Yo-Yo, would be we have more pressing needs in the team. I think if we've got limited funds, we just don't need to touch that. I think if Leno's fit, he's number one. Matt Ryan, if we can sign him on a free transfer after his loan period this year, then makes sense to just keep him as a number two. I don't think he's going to get many games. Arteta doesn't strike me as the sort of player who's going to rotate goalkeepers for different competitions. Yeah, I mean, the point there about Leno on his feet, you're right. And that's why I touched upon, there are certain situations in games where he doesn't look comfortable and he has made mistakes. But I think actually as a shot stopper, an overall goalkeeper, he's a solid 7 out of 10. And to get 8, 9 or 10, Jess, you're talking 30, 40, 50 million pounds. So
that's when we're looking to challenge, right? I think we don't need an elite level goalkeeper right now. Liverpool waited until they were getting ready to challenge, to bring in their world-class center back, world-class shot stopper. So obviously, I think that's pretty much where we are. There's the elite level, and then Leno's just kind of right below it. Has his faults. All goalkeepers make mistakes, but should we, I agree with you. I think some of the criticism has been unfair, but it's because a lot of players, or quite a few players on this team, are being asked to do things that are outside of their comfort zone, outside of their skill level, and they'll either adjust or they'll be replaced over time, which is perfectly fine. I see that some of you guys have questions. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I mean, I'll put it to you like this, Jess. So imagine you had the option of buying a top tier goalkeeper for £60 million. So you get rid of Leno, you bring in Oblak, for argument's sake. Does he have problems? Are we going to concede significantly fewer goals with a top tier goalkeeper? Probably not. But if we were to use £60 million and buy, let's say, a top class centre back, or even a centre back and a right back, that to me is much saucier, and so I would prefer to go down that route. So yeah, I don't think goalkeeper is a priority right now, but it's a good question. Sorry, you were going to say.
And goalkeepers look better when they have better defenses in front of them. That's really what it is. I know the preferred Martinez. I preferred Martinez as well, just from what kind of goalkeeper he was. But don't get it twisted. He had 3 center backs in front of him, and Ceballos and Xhaka sitting in front of the box, you know, he was much more protected. And I think he was, you know, the team was more confident then. When we started playing Arteta's new system, you know, in the 4-2-3-1, that's when people started to get a little bit more shaky. And when your defense is not as solidified, yeah, the goalkeeper looks worse, you know. So I think, you know, we just wait on that. But I see that some of you guys have questions and we didn't have a chance to get to them. I'm very, very sorry, Lone Star. You know, I love you. Come back tomorrow for the Q&A at 3 p.m. UK time, and we'll answer more questions, or at least I will. I'll be here. And if you want to answer it, you know, quicker, you can put it in the comment section after the video, and I'll answer it, you know, in an hour or so. But you guys, that's going to be it for the video for today. I think we went a little bit over, but I think it was worth it because FK was absolutely brilliant. FK, did you have fun?
I loved it. Thank you, Jess. Time flew. I wasn't even watching, but I really enjoyed it. And like I said, once again, my apologies for sitting in the dark. I don't have the setup quite as elegant as you, but I will in due course. So thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
No problem. And thank you for being on. Can you let everybody know kind of where they can find you, or, you know, on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter. There's my handle. So F Carnage, as I used to be called at school. I've been on Twitter a long time. You know, get in touch, drop me a DM, drop me a question, whatever it is you want, guys. You guys want to talk about. Happy to engage.
Amazing. Okay, you guys, don't forget, you know, we did a little bit of housekeeping earlier, but tomorrow at 3 p.m. UK time, another live Q&A, just me and you and all your questions, and I'll try to answer as many as I can within an hour of time. And Harry Symeou will be on the show tomorrow at 6 p.m. UK time, and we will be previewing all the big European fixtures, including PSG versus Bayern. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. You like the video. I'm going to go check to make sure that there's at least 40-something likes on this video. If there's not, I'm going to be so mad at you guys. You know, I may not even come back. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you guys, that's pretty much it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye, y'all.